Mr. Speaker, the federal government has introduced a GST tax break that will put money directly into the pockets of Canadians, especially for families who need it the most. In my constituency of Davenport, every penny counts, and a temporary GST tax break for the holiday season and early New Year is very welcome. My question to the minister is simple. Can she explain why the Conservative leader and his party voted against this tax break, especially when they claim to be champions of tax cuts and affordability?
Very good.
Eric? I'm going to ask the honourable member from Davenport to please repeat the question, because I did not catch the end of the question, which the honourable member from Davenport.
Okay, twice.
Mr. Speaker, the federal government has introduced a GST tax break that will put money directly into the pockets of Canadians, especially for families who need it most. In my constituency of Davenport, every penny counts, and a temporary GST tax break for the holiday season and early New Year is very welcome. My question to the minister is simple. Can she explain why the Conservative leader and his party voted against this tax break, especially when they claim to be champions of tax cuts and affordability?
Good question.
I'm sorry, say that again. Although the preamble of the question dealt with a government initiative, the question itself was asking the government to comment on the, in terms of, colleagues, I'll have more to say about this at the end of question period in terms of question, but I will mention to the honourable member from Davenport that unfortunately that question does not deal with the administration of government. And so I'm afraid that question is considered out of order, and I will be moving on to the next question. I see that the Honourable Government House Leader is rising on a point of order.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, in light of what happened in question period today from the question from the member from Davenport, as well as the question that was posed last week on Wednesday by the member from Kingston, in terms of taking away a government's response, the precedent that had been set in this place is that even if a member asks a question that is not related to government business, if the minister gets up, the Speaker had recognized that minister to speak. And so I'm just asking for some consistency and fairness in the practice so that we all know as members of Parliament in the frame of how these questions should be asked and whether an answer is respected or is given or not, as well as what if a member from the opposition is asking a question that is out of order, what the consequence would be for that. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Good point of order.
The honourable member from Battle River Crowfoot is rising on a point of order.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On the same point of order, it I think is important to highlight that while the government did ask in their questions and you challenge them on their relevance to the administration of government, which is articulated very clearly throughout the course of our standing orders, when it comes to asking questions directly related to the confidence of the government, of which the coalition agreement and the fact that the fourth party continues to back up the government in this place, Mr. Speaker, that has direct relevance into the administration of governments. For if a government cannot command the confidence of the House, they cannot administer the government.
I have two other points of order which have been recognized by the Speaker. The Honourable Member for Kingston Island, followed by the Honourable Member from Saanich Gulf Islands. And I see that the Honourable Member from New Westminster Burnaby is also rising, as well as from Brantford Brant. The Honourable Member.
To add to the intervention of the House Leader, Mr. Speaker, I would like to submit the following to you. There seems to be a precedent that's developing that if you are of the side of the government, you belong to the political party of the government, your question will not be answered if you deem it not to be in line with government business. The problem with that is, Mr. Speaker, is that neither the member from Davenport nor myself are members of the government. We're not parliamentary secretaries and we're not cabinet. Therefore, we're entitled to the exact same rights that you afford to every other member of this House. So, if you're deciding that a precedent will be set, that they will be able to have their questions answered, you must afford the same, you must afford the exact same respect to our questions. Otherwise, I would argue that you're breaching our privilege.
The Honourable Member from Saanich Gulf Islands is rising on a point of order. The Honourable Member.
Mr. Speaker, it's a different point of order but related to the same question, which is this. When a member stands and poses a question which you find not to be within the proper frame of government business, if someone had stood and asked a question which used an inappropriate word, that member would be given an opportunity to rephrase the question and ask it again. In this instance, the Honourable Member for Davenport has lost that opportunity to ask a question forever. And I wonder, Mr. Speaker, if we could if you could see the latitude to see if a member can quickly reframe a question and make it within the proper framework of government business.
I thank the Honourable Member for Saanich and the Gulf Islands. I'm going to add the Honourable Member from New Westminster Burnaby is rising on a similar point of order.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And of course, if you look at the jurisprudence, the traditions of this House, you have just a point to references from decisions made by the member for Regina Capel when he was Speaker of the House. When he determined that you were absolutely correct in cutting off a Liberal question that wasn't dealing with government business. You would be equally right in cutting every single one of those frivolous and vexatious questions coming from the Conservative Party. It's not as if they don't know the rules. They just refuse to respect them. So I would ask you to have them respect it. If the question is not dealing with government business, you cut it off immediately. You don't let them finish, because that's what the member from Regina Capel put in place in this House.
I thank the Honourable Member. I have to admit I could not hear the last sentence that he had said, but I will read a answer to inform myself as to what he had said. But to the matter that was raised by the Honourable Member, the Honourable Government House Leader, as well as a member from Kingston and the Islands and a member from Davenport, there's a few, as well as Battle River Crowfoot. It's really important for the chair to order, please. It's important to recall that at oral questions are to be addressed, of course, to the government, meaning to the minister or to a parliamentary secretary, and that regarding matters of the administrative nature of any government. The only exceptions are questions addressed to committee chairs regarding the agenda of a committee or to a representative of the Board of Internal Economy. It is not the order to ask questions of members of opposition parties or nor to ask the government to answer for positions taken by opposition parties. And I would like to remind all members that when they are preparing their questions, they clearly should take that into account. Members have been very good about, of course, having some preambles, or maybe perhaps at the very end putting in a hook that relates to the administrative matters of government or to a committee or to the Board of Internal Economy, and those questions are considered in order. But there are occasions rather, when questions arise are determined to be out of order, and I allow the minister to respond. But that is where, especially in cases where there is, and I'll be very careful about this, where the question contains criticisms of the government, and I want to afford the government an opportunity to respond. In the cases where questions from members of the governing party contain criticisms of opposition parties, without it being under the responsibility of the government, then it is allowing a response from the minister would only seem to compound that criticism without giving the opportunity for the party that is being criticized to respond. So that is the reason why we have these rules. This is the reason why this has been brought forward. I brought this forward last fall in a ruling to members, and I will come back with a more detailed version of this, but I just want to give members a quick top-line view on this matter. The honourable member from Kingston-Leon is rising on a point of order.
Mr. Speaker, could you then please explain why the party that comes from the governing side even has 3 questions? The point is for us as MPs who are not part of the government to still hold the government accountable. That's the whole point. So you have to afford the exact same treatment to every member who is not a member of the government.
I thank the honourable member for Kingston-Leon raising this point, and I will come back to the House with a fuller explanation as I had just promised earlier.